a brand new edition of NFL Power Rankings. It is presented by Energizer, along with Eric at home. Mike Yam with you. There's a ton to get to. We actually have some movement at the top. But before we get there, before we start recording this show, Eric, a little news trickles in here. And I don't know what the most interesting part of this is. The fact that Cincinnati has traded for a quarterback, the fact that it is Joe Flacco, or the fact that this happened in the division. What stands out the most to you?
All three, right? I guess the Bengals decided, A, they needed a quarterback. B, they needed a guy who could beat Green Bay, their next opponent. That's the one guy who's done it this season. So still trying to make sense of this. I didn't think Flacco was going to be the kind of guy who got traded this year, but Brown's clearly moving forward with Dylan Gabriel, and we'll see what Joe can do in Cincy.
Yeah, and by the way, from a Cleveland perspective, this was the most talked about quarterback room in the NFL. I think those conversations are not going anywhere now that Flacco is gone and Shedeur Sanders slots up on the depth chart. All right, let's get a closer look at the power rankings 1 through 8, and we have a change. The Detroit Lions sitting at the top. We saw the Eagles and the Bills lose, so they fall to 2 and 3 respectively. Tampa Bay, this team just continues to win. They sit 4-1. They move up 3 spots. They're in the 4th position. Seattle, look, I mean, this is still a dangerous team here. They remain even at 5. Green Bay sitting at 6. And we got the Rams dropping 3 spots to the 7th position and the Colts at 8. Time for Power Moves. It is presented by Energizer. All right, Eric, let's focus in on this number 1 team in the Lions. I knew you were going to have to slot these guys in after we saw Philadelphia and Buffalo go and lose. But candidly speaking, I think even if those teams had won, the way Detroit looks, like they really do warrant this top position.
They do, but as I wrote in the power rankings this week, a theme seems to be, and now that we have no unbeaten teams left, that everybody's got a big question at the top. But when you have the offensive firepower and also the defensive prowess too of the Lions, they're starting to make more plays on that side of the ball. You could see it through the first 3 quarters Sunday. This is a team to be taken seriously, even with some injuries. Terry Arnold, we'll find out how long he's out. David Montgomery, obviously part of that great running duo. He can also throw it, former high school quarterback there. So they still have all that great offensive versatility, all that playmaking ability. Wish they would have played a little bit better 4-quarter game. 3rd quarter was about where they peaked, and then obviously let the Bengals get back in it. But still, think they were warranted this week, and especially given that Buffalo and Philly both lost at home.
Look, I know there's a lot of people that will look at the final score and say that the Bengals did get back into this game. Here's what I would tell you. I think in a lot of ways that team was playing for their regular season / postseason lives to stay afloat. They were at home. So I'm not surprised that the game maybe was a little bit tighter than most had anticipated, but this is a huge matchup for them. Sunday Night Football, they match up against Kansas City. I think the Chiefs are also in this really weird situation of going like, hey, are we really good, or are we a team that's got some major question marks? But we'll dissect that in just a bit here. Meanwhile, the Eagles, Eric, this is a team that I sit here and I go, there was drama, they were undefeated. Now they lose, and they give up a pretty significant run to the Broncos. 21 4th-quarter points, the 2-point conversion from Denver's perspective late in that game, onions from Sean Payton. Explain to me the level of concern that you have for Philadelphia.
Well, when you have that kind of lead at home, right, we're so used to seeing the Eagles sort of choke opponents out with their run game, right? Even the quick passing game, Jalen Hurts' improvisational skills, all those things, that's death for a defense, right? But we didn't see that happen on Sunday. We didn't see them hand off. I believe they had 9 handoffs in the game, and one that wasn't negated by penalty, at least, came in the second half. One handoff to Saquon Barkley. He is a pretty good back last time I checked. I know his long run of the year is something like 16, 17 yards. The explosive plays haven't been there. Maybe he's a little more banged up than we're realizing at this point. But that right there, the offensive lack of balance and opponents, sort of figuring that this is going to be a pass-heavy operation right now, unless it's short yardage situation, that's limiting them. And we've seen them, Mike, now 3 straight games and arguably 4 out of 5 where they play pretty well for a half, and then all of a sudden something happens in the other one. It could be the first or the second half. And so just not playing 60 minutes of good football. They're here for a reason. They're good. They're really talented. The defending champs, they can turn this thing around in a heartbeat. But right now, we're starting to see some identity questions that have cropped up for a team that had locked in and sort of in its nucleus and its DNA, rather, who they were, and they're getting away from it a little bit.
I fight this in my head because I'm with you. You've had them as the best team in the NFL on this show, the first few weeks of this season. there's a part of me that says, yeah, they haven't hit that ceiling. But now I start asking, like, are they number 2 because of the potential of what they are as opposed to the reality? I know we can go off of record and say they were undefeated, but at the same time, they don't look as good. Like, I think this was an opportunity for you, Eric, to slot Buffalo in front of them. Now, I know the Bills had lost that game and they lose to a Patriots team inside that division, but I don't know. I think Buffalo just looks better just by coming off of a loss than Philadelphia does. But what's your read right now on Josh Allen's crew? Because I think the story is maybe the Drake May and the Patriots on the rise as opposed to Buffalo just not handling business on Sunday night.
I agree with you to a certain extent, but you can also look back at the Miami game, which they ended up winning, and the New Orleans game, which they ended up winning, where, you know, as I wrote this week, they kind of played with their food a little bit. They got away with it. They were able to win those games, endure, move on, that sort of thing. But against New England, even with the Patriots giving the ball up a couple times early in the game, they weren't able to do that. And there wasn't the same level of offensive productivity. There were the turnovers that we really hadn't seen to this point, including a bad Josh Allen interception in the red zone. That's a game changer right there. So the defense not able to stop May in the fourth quarter, not able to get that New England offense off the field at times. So yeah, this is not the kind of, situation we're talking about with the Eagles where you say, boy, this is something that could really, be interesting for them. But it has sort of trended the last few games where you'd expect a certain level of dominance from them, and it's just not there right now. So I agree. This should be sort of more positive for the Patriots than it is negative for Buffalo, but I'm still a little bit worried about the total makeup. Again, it's early, and no team has really shown themselves to be that clear-cut number 1, so they're right in the mix.
Yeah, look, you're right, because I think Detroit, even with the blemish on their resume with Green Bay, I don't know who the clear-cut number 1 is. I think you slot them correctly. By the way, the Eagles, I know we talked about them. The Broncos get that win. The Patriots get that win. We will focus on both of those teams coming up here on Power Rankings. I am smiling as I'm saying Tampa Bay Buccaneers because, man, they are just fun to watch. I had said this to one of our colleagues, Steve Weich, the other day. I said, look, the guy that Baker Mayfield took over was Tom Brady. And I'm not saying it's the same, and I hate to make this comp, but in these late game situations, when Tom stride out onto the football field, I go, hey, all good. They're going to figure it out. I have the same vibe now with Baker Mayfield late in ball games. Like, there's time on the clock. They're going to figure out a way to get it done.
I'm a little shocked, Mike, that there hasn't been more. Again, it's early in the season and all that. Who knows if the Bucs can keep up this pace? But there hasn't been enough Baker Mayfield MVP talk for my taste, right? I want to see this guy get the love he deserves. And, we think about all the hoops he's had to jump through, the debacle in Cleveland, going to Carolina, ending up in LA, and then having to win his job in Tampa in a tryout against Kyle Trask. So that was all fairly recent stuff. He's now ascended from that level. Most teams didn't want to sign him as a free agent to, boy, he has proven himself to be one of the most competitive, hard-nosed, clutch quarterbacks in the NFL. And what else do we debate about for MVP caliber, credentials? That's the stuff that we're going to want to see. So he's delivered almost every time out, came up a little short against the Eagles, but otherwise has been fantastic. And doesn't really matter who's out of the lineup. He trusts Emeka Ibuga. He has these weapons that are, not as well known, that he's saying, I'm going to throw you the same ball that I would have thrown Mike Evans 2 weeks ago. So I love the confidence from Baker, and I love the confidence of this team that give us a chance at a 1-score game, and we'll probably come out on top.
Yeah, and this could be a tough test against a pretty good Niners team coming up this week. Yeah. By the way, I covered a lot of college sports, college basketball, college football, and they do like blind resumes, right? And you start comparing teams. I'd love to do a blind resume of Baker Mayfield and then just a bunch of other quarterbacks. And you're 100% right, because if his name was Mahomes or Allen or Jackson on the back of that jersey, we would be talking about him for MVP. The Seahawks, in an absolute shootout, one of the more entertaining games of the weekend. What am I supposed to make of this team? Because I know that there was glimpses of this defense. We were loving them up where there were some struggles here. But are you with me and you say, like, hey, I still am a believer in Sam Darnold and company?
Yeah, Darnold was terrific outside of the interception. It was a crazy play too, right? A glance at sort of the perfect angle right to the defender. I'm not going to kill a guy who had, 370 plus passing yards, 4 touchdowns. I mean, he helped keep them in it. He was as good as Baker was for most of the game. So, Jackson Smith and Jigba, that run game, I think the offensive formula is pretty darn good right now. What worries me a little bit was watching that game and seeing how many open receivers there were for the Bucs just streaking through the secondary. That's not something anything we'd really seen previously to that, against the Seahawks. Sure, they've given up some yards, but not a ton. And that defense had made strides. So just, is that a 1 week blip? Or was it the caliber of opponent, or is it something else that we have to worry about? It is their second home loss too. So again, it's early in the season, and that's sort of something you take note of and file away for a later date. But I thought about dropping them. We'll see what happens at this big game at Jacksonville next week. But I still think they're pretty darn good. Maybe not number 5 good, but that's kind of what their resume is speaking to me right now. And I have my questions about all these guys, but at some point you have to sort of file them in and figure out where they stack up.
Yeah, look, I can tell just based off of this position that you still are a believer in this team. This is a tougher game than I think I would have anticipated just 2 days ago against Jacksonville. What I saw from them on Monday night, and this confidence that I think they get from a win against the Kansas City Chiefs is going to be a tough test for them. The Rams, they dropped 3 spots for you. I get it. You're not supposed to lose a game like that. I mean, San Francisco is banged up right now. The Niners seem to just have the Rams' number. That game, SoFi Stadium, how do you explain this? Like, they were, on paper, they're the better football team.
Yeah, I think I point to 2 positions right now that concern me a little bit. One is kicker, right? We know a couple years ago, Sean McVay had all the kicking issues. They had 2 different guys. They were kind of, trying to figure out how they were going to play it. It ended up kind of hurting the team and costing them wins. I think McVay wants to do everything possible to avoid that situation. That's where they are right now with Joshua Carty. Not enough consistency for them. That obviously hurt him in the game. But also the running back situation. Blake Corum can't handle the early toss. Kyron Williams is going into the end zone, loses the football. You remember he had some ball security issues in middle of last season as well. So, there's a lot of good. And as Sean said after the game, we had plenty of chances to win the game. I just keep remembering that because that's what I wrote in my notes. I said they should be winning. They should be taking this game over at this point. It didn't happen. You got to credit the Niners for an incredible effort, but those are the kind of games, and the Philly loss as well, one they kind of controlled for the most part. They let those things slip away, and it just makes you wonder. They could have lost that game to the Texans in week 1. It took a late turnover to kind of bail them out. So they're playing with fire a little bit. That just worries me a tiny bit.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of these teams, though, that are playing with fire, and like Tampa Bay would be a good example. Like, the games are falling in their favor. The Denver Broncos, for example, like, they've been kind of split here. But I'm glad you bring up that Philly loss for them, because that's another one at the end of the season. McVay and company will be like, bro, like, we had that one on the road. And then you're going to look at this Niners one and say, like, what's going on here? It's just something to think about. Rams in a get-right situation on the road against Baltimore. I can't believe those words just came out of my mouth, but the Ravens obviously are banged up. I made reference to the Broncos. What a finish in Philadelphia. Where do they sit in the power rankings? That answer is coming up next.
Power Rankings is brought to you by Energizer. Still going.
Back here on Power Rankings, along with Eric Edholm, Mike Yam with you, and this is Eric's teams 9 through 16. It's the Commanders, Broncos, and Jags sitting at 9, 10, and 11. At 12, Kansas City coming off of a loss on Monday Night Football. They dropped 3 spots to the 12th position. The Niners just continue to find ways to win. They move up 2 spots to 13th. The Chargers, they drop to 14, and then it's the Steelers and Vikings at 15 and 16. All right, Jaden Daniels comes back into the lineup for the Commanders. They get a win against the Chargers. A win is a win. I'm not trying to story this and make excuses. Chargers pretty banged up right now. You still saw enough from a Commander's perspective to say, hey, they deserve to sit in the top 10.
I was the only guy in NFL media who actually picked the Commanders to win. So, I think I look at it that way. Like, hey, I was impressed. I thought Jaden Daniels, I didn't know what to expect out of him. The first quarter or so, he really wasn't getting the footing right. Switch cleats, everything was good. But Washington's defense, too. I know you mentioned the Chargers are banged up. There's no question their offensive line's in bad shape. But they continue to make huge plays on this side of the ball. There were really 3 big ones. Quentin Johnston's fumble in the first half, a bad roughing penalty on the Chargers at the end of the first half, and then that one right there, Mikey Sainer still picking off Herbert. But when you can finish the game in style like this, tossing a little lollipop to Deebo Samuel, life is good again. And so I think the Commanders got knocked down, rightfully so, with Daniels being out. They lost the game. He's back now. He looked terrific, and it just felt like there was an aura around this team that we hadn't seen really since probably last season. season, but maybe in week 1. And just seeing them regain it a little bit made me think, I think this team's going to move up even more at some point.
Yeah, like we go international with our next team, and that's the Denver Broncos, who head to London this weekend, a matchup against the Jets, which you can catch on NFL Network. They move up 2 spots. I'm looking at some of my notes here. This is a team that has lost their 2 games by 4 total points, a couple walk-off field goals. They get a win in Philadelphia. This was a dramatic comeback win in that 4th quarter. I think the Broncos are legit. And once again, we're talking about a play here or there from talking about an undefeated football team.
Yeah, I'd love to see them kind of get rid of the slow starts a little bit. We saw Nick's kind of hesitant at times, but boy, did he light it up. Started using his legs a little in the 3rd quarter, got some things going, and then found his rhythm as a passer. I think he was 9 of 10 for 124 yards in the 4th alone. Had the 2-point conversion too. That was a beautiful throw. So look, everything was firing for them. They figured out the Eagles defense, but it did take them a while. I love what the Broncos D does. Sacks were there all game. Hurts might have run into a few, but the pressure was there. Coverage could be a little better. And again, just not putting themselves in holes. But when you have the kind of fight and I think execution that they showed in the second half, this is a Broncos team that preseason, some people thought maybe they're the NFC West or AFC West favorites. Maybe they can overcome the Chiefs. We'll see. Right now, they're ahead of them and looking pretty good, I would say.
Yeah, I think there was some, I don't want to say concern, but people talked about Bo Nix when he got drafted and say, hey, Denver reached for him. And Sean Payton's like, no, he was my guy the whole time. If that is the case, and I'll take him at his word, they know what they're doing in terms of scouting, because Bo Nix is a real dude and has been very impressive in these first couple campaigns. You mentioned Denver's defense, which has been pretty good. The team right now leading the NFL in terms of takeaways. Devin Lloyd, by the way, 4 interceptions by himself. That also leads the NFL. The Jags in prime time, they beat Kansas City. To me, this is a confidence-building game where I start to say, hey, they've been able to manage just some lesser moments from their offense so far this season to get some of these wins. I'm kind of liking this team.
Absolutely, especially when you consider Liam Cohen's expertise is on the offensive side. They're going to find better ways to get Travis Hunter the ball. We saw the big play from him. Parker Washington made a great play here on the touchdown. And just the inconsistency we saw from Lawrence throwing the football. There were some spectacular throws, especially on that final drive. Obviously, the touchdown run, we're going to watch this one for years and laugh at how many seconds tick off the clock while he was down there. But incredible play. Obviously, his legs did a lot of the heavy lifting Sunday night, and you saw some fight and some spirit. Didn't love how he managed certain situations, taking a sack late, taking a delay of game, but boy, when you can make some big-time plays like that, it makes up for it. And you're right, defensively, the takeaways have been a huge part of their equation. And this team is just absolutely rolling with confidence. And like the Bucs, they're just fun to watch, Mike. I mean, every time I turn them on, I'm like, something's happening with them. And that's a good sign right there.
3 total touchdowns for Trevor Lawrence, 2 on the ground on his 26th birthday. And Devin Lloyd is about to get paid this offseason for what he has been able to accomplish at that linebacker spot. All right, time for Future Champions. It is presented by FanDuel. Eric, I do want to get your take on the NFC West and the odds here to go and win it. You got the Niners still the favorite at -120. The Rams right behind them at +190. Seattle at +480. Not for nothing, pretty good value there. And the Arizona Cardinals has had some issues at +3,300. The Niners, though, on your rankings, they move up 2 spots and are sitting now at 13th. How good of a job is Kyle Shanahan orchestrating right now on the sidelines for this team, considering all of the injuries that continue to mount up?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I've had a lot of people say, hey, why so low, right? Shouldn't they be higher? Shouldn't they be above a 2-3 team like the Chiefs? I understand. Part of why I've held back is because they've been so ravaged by injury, whether it's, obviously the playmakers there, the quarterback Purdy. Mac Jones has done a fantastic job in his place, but even he got banged up, and we weren't sure he was going to be able to finish that game Thursday. So I keep having to hedge a little bit, but when you have players like Kendrick Bourne who can step up, Mac Jones, obviously some of these other parts, Tonjes at tight end has been great. But again, it comes back to Kyle Shanahan knowing how to employ these guys. And I think he does as good a job as anybody in the league when he's got a backup quarterback or when he's in one of these situations where, he's got to alter the plan. That's when Kyle's genius really seems to come out. Christian McCaffrey, we know they're going to ride him till the wheels fall off, and he's so good for him. But there's a lot more lurking here, and I just wonder if they're going to be punished at some point for all their injuries. But right now they're holding firm.
Yeah, I did an interview in the Bay Area, and they had asked me, hey, like, do you think there's a quarterback controversy here with Mac Jones getting all these wins? I said, hey, man, I got to pump the brakes on that. It is still Brock Purdy's team. We'll see what happens in a couple weeks. But if Brock doesn't play this weekend, and we're talking about Mac Jones, and he gets a win on the road against Tampa Bay, I think I might call the radio station and revisit that convo. Meanwhile, I know we were loving up the Patriots after a huge win. We're going to focus in on them, not to mention this Dallas Cowboys team. A closer look at Dak Company after just handling the Jets. But really, in my mind, that Patriots team is legit. Drake May looking pretty strong. Where do they sit on the rankings? That's coming up next. Back here on Power Rankings, along with Eric at home, Mike Yam with you. Eric's team 17 through 24, the Texans. Oh, let's go, starting to win. Moving up 4 spots to 17, the Patriots also flashing at 18. It's the Bears, Cowboys, and Falcons at 19, 20, and 21. The Ravens, the free fall continues, dropping 6 spots. They are a 1-4 football team sitting at 22nd. The Cardinals at 23, and the Carolina Panthers at 24. All right, the Patriots, they move up the 5 spots. Can you just love up Drake May and company, because that was an impressive win for him on Sunday night.
It was. He was, kind of struggling earlier. He was taking some sacks. He was feeling the pressure. And then the second half came, and he really showed why he's one of the bright young stars in this league at the quarterback position. And, they are always comparing him to Josh Allen, Josh Jr., whatever you want to call him. I thought he outplayed Josh in the fourth quarter. I mean, he made some big-time throws. Obviously, Stephon Diggs coming back to Highmark. This one was personal for him. So we'll see if he can continue that kind of production throughout the season. But he looked like a number 1 receiver. And that was one of the issues I had with this team. Did they have a go-to target? Was May able to make those plays that he made Sunday night? We saw it. Can it continue? I don't know. But, those mistakes from the first quarter were erased, and they really played some good football toward the end there.
Yeah, I just love the fact that a national audience got to watch Drake May, because I don't think people realize what's been happening in New England and the strength that he's got. That was hat tip, respect there. Cowboys, they move up 2 spots. I look at this Dallas team. CeeDee Lamb's been banged up. Dak and company, man, like I get it record-wise, like not like the premier teams, but Dak's playing like an MVP.
I agree. Yeah, he's been fantastic, and I hope people realize that too. Almost like Joe Burrow last year, right? Yeah. Stuck on a team with a tough record, playing elite level quarterback. Now, granted, it's the Jets. We have to factor that in. They've been struggling, only winless team left, but controlled this game throughout. Really took it to them early on. I love the confidence in Ryan Flanoy and other receivers like that. It doesn't have to be George Pickens every single time when Lamb's out. Javonte Williams running the football well. Wow. Defensively, give Matt Eberflus a little credit. Given who they have right now, even with the Jets, I thought they played really well on that side. So, that Bears game is almost the aberration now. They've been competitive in every single game except that one.
21-3 was the score at one point for the Cardinals. They lose. What am I supposed to do with this team?
Figure out a way not to fumble the ball 1 inch outside the end zone, Amari DiMarcado. I mean, especially after Adonai Mitchell did it for the Colts last week. We saw how disastrous that was. Please, we need to get this play out of the league. It has no place, right? When you consider that, and then the interception that was dropped and then recovered by the Titans in the end zone. The Arizona Cardinals are finding new inventive ways to find the most painful losses possible. They almost did it against the Carolina Panthers. They certainly did it against the Niners in San Francisco after a safety. Losing that game was tough. This one, about 8 times tougher. How does this play happen? I don't even understand, but it did. Tyler Lockett earned his stripes, and Cam Ward looked pretty darn good in the fourth quarter.
Interception, fumble, touchdown, all in one play. Absolutely wild. Teams 25 through 32. The Saints, the Titans get that win that we just talked about. They rise 6 spots. Cincinnati, we mentioned that trade. Joe Flacco now in Cincinnati after getting traded from Cleveland. The Giants, the Browns, Miami, the Raiders, and the Jets close out the rankings. The Saints, they do move up those 5 spots. Can we just say, hey, Spencer, 0 for 10 coming into this game. Job well done and get your first NFL win.
I wish he could have gotten on his birthday last week. Wasn't able to get the Trevor Lawrence birthday party, but he's played well. 1 turnover. He's using his athleticism, throwing the ball over the field. Give this guy a little credit. He deserves it. I like the way Spencer Rattler's played this year.
Yeah, maybe Kellen Moore knew what he was doing, deciding to give Spencer Rattler the reins and QB1 status and not Tyler Shuck, who will eventually get his turn. Eric, you're the best man. Great job on power rankings. We'll catch you guys next week.